Okay, the Zoom session should be going. Whenever we work with a string variable, we're really working with an array of characters. So a string is already an array. We don't have to think about it that way, but it really is. So if I look at my name here, my R would be index position 0 in my name. The E would be index position 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I did a length command on this word being an array, I would get back 5. So my length would be equal to 5. The highest index value I could use in that string would be 4. It would always be the highest. So a string is just an array. So in this program, we're going to ask our user to type in a sentence, and we're going to split up the sentence into several different words. And then we'll take that a little further and see if we can split the words up into letters if we want to, or at least find the first letter in the word. So let's create a new file. Okay, hiccups.
Sorry.
You're fine. I don't want to laugh at you, but I will.
Oh, I laughed at myself.
I'm going to save this thing.
Have you ever thought of like a really weird, funny joke, and someone asked you what, and you start laughing out loud, and someone asked you what the joke was, and then you just completely forget it?
Yup. I'm going to make this Python.
What did you put?
I called it Chapter 7 Sentence. So I'm going to put some comments in. Let's see. I swear. You think they took the Zoom function out? I can't get it.
I've got some. Wait, you can
Like zoom into it.
Well, you can Zoom. We just can't get it to quit.
room. Apparently there's not. Oh, there it is. Zoom in, zoom out. Where?
Control plus equals.
No, control. Oh. That's
Control
it
equal.
is. Now I can see the code clearly.
I wouldn't go too far.
Yeah, I don't go too far. So do that. Try it. He's going to go.
One word at a time. And then the button right next to it zooms out.
Yep, should zoom back in. Okay, now you should be able to see a little better. So we're going to call this Python script sentence. Make yourself the developer. I give you authorization.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're welcome. So our purpose is going to be to read in a sentence and split it into an array of words. So for this program, we're going to need our input to be a sentence. We shouldn't need any other input. So let's create an input function. No. I don't want to take a quick survey, so I'm going to call it get input.
Oh my gosh, it's doing the underline thing to you. I hate that. I could fill this program.
It's just saying it's an empty function. So I just
That's
get,
what it's saying?
uh-huh.
I thought it was saying that something was wrong with it.
Well, right now there is because it's an empty function.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, like, it was formatted wrong.
Nah,
I couldn't figure it
just
out.
keep going. Now I'm going to print out like a heading, a welcome message. We haven't been doing that a lot because we just get right into our code, but we'll print a nice one for this one. The help things, I wish I could stop. So is this going to be a little bit long? We'll say, what do you want to call this? This would be the word 8 or.
No, it's wordinator.
Okay,
Get it?
I'll make that an N then. There we go.
That's how we make it one word.
He's an 8er. All right, and let's print. Oh, I don't need a print on that one. I want to return whatever we get for input. And we're going to say enter a sentence to analyze. And on this prompt, since they're going to enter a whole sentence, I would like the cursor to go down to the next line and be sitting there ready for them to type in. That's the dash N thing. Good job. I was going to say, how could I do that? I could do \N. Very good. So I could do that right at the end of my input string and make that cursor go down to the next line. Let's put in a main and run that. Get input. And
Give it a new line.
in our get input, since we're returning a value, I need to use a variable to save that. So I'll call it sentence equals whatever I get returned from my get input. And then I want to run my main and see if that's all working. So I just want to test.
Oh, what do you-
The most ridiculous variable name you've ever seen.
oh, my God.
Yeah, I probably couldn't say it out loud. Let's try running this. Okay, so I should see my prompt.
Yeah.
Enter a sentence to analyze. The blue goose goes. Okay, and nothing happened, but that's okay because I wasn't doing anything with it, but I saw my prompt and it looked like I was down on the next line. Now with Visual Studio Code, I might need to reorganize a little bit more. Try that again. Or if I really wanted to, I could set up a breakpoint and step through it using the debugger. Like if I was still unclear on how calling the different functions worked, I would go ahead and set a breakpoint right here at this only line of code in my main. And then when I run, I should see execution stop right there, ready to get my sentence. So if I click step into, I should see execution branch to my get input function. It's ready to run that first line in my get input function. I'll step into again. It's ready to print out that second line. Next, it's asking for my word as soon as I run this line of code. So I'm going to run it. And now here's my prompt. Enter a sentence to analyze. Oops, I got to click down here. I'm in the wrong place.
Oh, you should put a blue cheese, not blue, it's gray.
Let you get it. Okay, so I'm still sitting here. I got to put an error in my code. So I'll Control Z to get rid of that. And then I'm going to continue stepping, and I should be done with executing the program. So we can always use that debugger to step through and see how execution is branching from one function to another. Okay, so good. We got our sentence. let's put some more in our main. After we get our sentence, let's do some things with it. We have this great utility or function available called split. So we're going to use the split function to split, and I'm going to go to another line, the sentence into words. Now I want words to be an array, and it will be, because by default split is going to result in an array. So I'm going to say I want my words array to be my sentence after it has been split. Now, when I use the split function, right now I didn't give it any sort of parameter. So the default is a space. Everywhere the split function finds a space, it's going to split into a new array entry in our words array. We could make that be a comma. So I could put like comma in there as my parameter, and then it would split based on finding a comma. But we don't need to do that, so I'll leave it empty. Now, after I split up my sentence, I'm going to print out my words array so we can see it. So let's try running our program like that. Blue, goose, flew. And now, there it is. It went by fast. Make this area bigger. So I put in my sentence, and then, oops, stuff in the way. When I printed out my words array, see how now, instead of just being a sentence, it's an array, because we have all 4 of these different entries in our array separately. So each one of those then is an entry in that array. So let's see if we can print them out. So instead of just printing out this whole array of words, let's create some more variables to hold some information. Let's create a variable to hold how many words were in our sentence. We could find that out using the length function on our words array. That would tell us how many entries ended up being words.
Can we put a print word?
Yeah, that's what we had before. So you can leave it in if you want. Not a problem. Now, whenever we are looking at our words array, we're just looking at that array, and the length function is going to give us how many words, different entries are in that array. But let's try another variable. Let's create a variable called letter count. Now, how could we find out how many letters were in all of those words? What would we have to do a length of?
No,
Which variable?
oh, God, the word. I'm sorry. Would it be,
You okay?
would it be the input, enter, sentence?
Your sentence. Our sentence is going to be the thing that has all of the letters, all of the words, without being split up into an array, right? So you were on it. So let's print those out then. I'm going to put a nice print command in. Print our sentence has word count words. And I need to make word count a string. So our sentence has word count words, And then let's print out our sentence as and this time we want to print out our letter count and say letters. So if you're ready, go ahead and try it and see if it's working. You might want to try a shorter sentence. Let's see, I'm going to run it. I think I'll try a brown cow.
Brown chicken brown.
Now that should give me 3 words and 13 letters. I can count it. Do my spaces count? They do count. And that's what we want because they're characters in that sentence, right? If they weren't in there, the sentence wouldn't make any sense. So we do count our spaces when we're looking at things that way. All right. So now we have the very,
Just because I've never heard this, it says unindent does not match any outer indentation.
So it means somewhere you quit indenting, but it doesn't know why. So you probably just moved over like a space, one of your lines of code.
Looks like it's a match, but I guess I'll have to play with this.
Can you see it? Is it telling you what line?
Yeah. It is line 19, so I don't know. Oh, does that mean I have to push everything? Let's see if that makes it. Nope. Line 26. I don't know how many.
Do you want to put
There
it
it
on?
is,
Did
yeah.
you find it?
Yep.
Yay. Those are hard to find. Okay, so we've got some great stuff here. Let's do a for loop to print out each word. So when we print out words, it prints all the entries in our array with the brackets around them, but that's not the same. I would like a list of each of the words in our sentence. So I'm going to use that for each loop. Remember, we just say for something in words. We can print out our something. Now try running that. Okay, so now I've got my enter a sentence. I'll do the big brown cow. And now I see my number of words, my number of letters. And now we have each word on its own separate line. I could do something, right? I could use that lower function if I wanted to make them all lowercase. I could use that uppercase function if I wanted to make each word uppercase. For now, I'm okay. So we've got it all there. Now let's put another loop in there. Let's say we know that each word is actually an array. Python doesn't print them out with all those square brackets and stuff because by default it's just a string. But can I say for each for each letter in something, print the letter. So now we've got a nice nested loop here And we should see the word print out, and then we should see each letter in the word print out, and then the next word. So I'm going to make my output area a little bit bigger so we can see it and try to run this thing. Okay, so here's my prompt. The big brown cow. Okay, so now I'm seeing, again, my statistics, 4 words, 17 letters. And first I have the. So we get the word, and then we go into our inner loop that prints out each letter. And then we get the next word, and then we get our inner loop that prints out each letter. Okay, so it's going through and doing all of that looping in the for each loops for each of our different items. So I like that. That's all good. But I think I need you guys to do some more work. I'd like to have a function that handles each word. So right here where we do print something, let's change that. And instead, I want to call a new function that we haven't created yet. Let's call it output word. And as an argument, we're going to send that word that we've named something to our function. Okay. So let's make that function, and that's why it's got the yellowy squiggly, because it's saying that function doesn't exist yet. So with Python, I have to scroll up to create that function. I need to put it before my main. So I'll put it right in between. We called it output word. Oops. And we said that we were going to pass it that word that we called something. So we're going to tell output word that it should expect a word to be passed to it. So now I want to print our word from that function instead of printing it in our main. So notice all I did was moved the printing of our word from directly in the main function to its own function. But our output should look exactly the same. So let's run it and make sure that nothing got affected. Make sure our output is exactly the same. A big brown cow.
So if it does the same thing, why did we do that?
Well,
Oh,
go ahead.
the wrong program.
Go ahead.
Never mind, I was in the wrong program.
You sure?
I know that there's definitely a reason.
There's lots of reasons, and we want each function to be responsible for one thing. That's going to be the best code. So we'd like this output word function to be responsible for doing all of the things we'd like to do to a word. And right now we're just printing it, but that's because I'm going to ask you to do some more things to a word. So in your output word function, let's add some things. I want you to print out the first letter of the word. Then print out the number of letters in the word. And what else? Oh yeah, the last letter. Remembering that if this variable were named word for my name, to print out the first letter, I would print word index value 0, right? And that would give me that first letter to print out. Okay, so I'm going to set my alarm for about, let's see how you're doing in 10 minutes. Work with others if you like.
But we already done the things that
Not of the word, but yes, we've done it already, but we did it for the sentence.
Oh,
So now I want you to add it to your output word function just for that word. So all of these things should go in your new output word function. And then we'll take a look at it and get everybody working the same.
Wait, if for some of the word is that, then would we put print?
Just like how she put
Oh.
that. It's 0.
I mean, print word.
But 0.
Right. So would you say print word and then print word and then bracket?
That's what I'm doing, just to add to it,
Yeah.
what she said.
So is there like a normal format for 9? Like variable name? Like there's no like, you know, like coding way that it shows that it's an array just based on the variable name. And in the for loop we created for you did like for something in words
Mm-hmm.
and you output something.
Right, like that.
And then after that, you did for letter and something. The letter and something. So is something automatically created in an array then? Or
Any string is always automatically an array.
oh, it should always an array.
Uh-huh.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Before I even run it, if I do.
But if you tried to do it like for a number, then you wouldn't get those same results. It's just because it's a
Well, if it was
string.
an actual integer, not like a string of a number.
Right.
I have a letter. Letter.
Last letter. Ooh.
So how does it know what the
Link
last
is the
letter
word.
is? How don't we
Because
have to
it
know
has a link to the word.
How
that's
do you know?
Do
Right. Or whatever word I'm putting in there.
things like this.
This I use is from.
Nice little word.
Okay.
So if we do like, what is it passing anyways? Oh, so does it for each one? Okay, that's later. Oh, it's out of range.
Yeah, see, that's the one, it's not.
Oh.
Isn't that bad coding to do -1
Hmm?
blank? So
Mm-mm.
that's fine.
It's
Is that the
standard.
only way to do it? Or
It's the standard way. Mhm.
I don't know.
Because the full name, I know they're two words, but I don't know how to print the last
Yep.
word. I don't know how many words.
H.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. What's the first? Yeah.
Because in this, like, I
Hello,
knew,
the
like,
first
my,
letter
I
is
knew
how
for sure,
many
like, the first and the first and last name, so I'm like, I'm just gonna put the second
Last letter.
two things.
And it automatically puts.
no one.
Right, but you could put in 5 letters in this. No, what I was trying to think was like, this program, I knew there's only 2 words already. So it's easy for me to start right for a second. I'm gonna start, it's like, what do you do? You don't know how to do it.
Well,
You know, what I mean?
yes, I think so.
Because I could enter like, how to don't or I could
We
fall.
So get rid of this thing. The basic. So type this in. Let's do 3 words.
Dog.
That's what dogs do. So it's on dog, which is your word. And then it's on the ball, which is this. It's on 3. It's on 3.
She just has 3 words.
Yeah, that's really just that. So you know how many words are in a sentence. I have a length of it.
Oh, okay. All right, Jackie, now I need to pick up. I know you're trying to put something down, so I'm trying to pick it up. But no, because my ears are getting it. I'm like, okay, I see the next. I haven't been having, hey, listen. Now I'm like trying to, what's over there? So I know the length is through because I didn't. So could I put one? Okay,
So how did, so here, just let's okay, so bring it up straight there. How do you get a specific letter? Let's start with that. How do you get a letter from the sentence? You already did it. You already did it.
That's very funny when we did it.
word.
You did it.
Zero.
Don't give it to her. I want to.
Oh, no, I was just letting her know, that's how she.
I know. I want her to. She needs to click it all together.
Right. So I get that's how, because that's the first word though.
The first letter. Okay, so just start. So just do that. That's okay. So just
And
type
I
it
got
again.
it. I get that.
So now we don't want the first letter, so get rid of length.
Right.
So now how do we figure out the last letter?
Length, this right here, length word.
Yeah.
So,
With that instead of that, have to make
I didn't know you
careful,
could do that.
careful cutting or copying the brackets, but then the
I didn't even know you could do that. I thought you could only put like.
brackets.
Wait,
So that gives you.
that hurts my head. Does that look right?
Yeah, that's right.
So wait for that.
So yeah, straight index is out of range, and that's because so the first one here, the 5, it shows you how many. First one's 5, so 5 words, right? And so then you try and do word length of words, so then you start at 0.
Right.
And so it's doing 1 over the max.
Okay.
So you just need to kind of cheese it, but minus 1.
Right here. Is that why you're asking if we could do a minus?
Yeah.
I'm not, I need that, that's the only part I don't get.
So let's wait for it.
Yeah.
I'll do something here and then I'll show you. So she prints the word, and then it prints the J, which is the first letter, and then it prints the length of that word, which is 10. And then she prints the word, the array word, the length of it
Right.
is equal to the letter. But the
Right.
length is 10, yeah, and so it's always 1 more, and so you get the minus 1.
But it's something crazy that
It's doing that to mine too. It's like cow, 3.
Yeah, it's because it does it for each word it indicates.
oh, okay.
That's defined by.
So you're just you're calling out the word. How do you
And I'm like,
because
why?
the word length is 10, but it counts as 0
Right.
as 0 to 9. That way you need to do
But
minus
mine's
1.
not, like, mine's literally got a 3. Because
That's because you did it in 3 words. It's length of 10. So it'd be very long. Yeah, that's what you're just, it's in a for loop, so it's going to be multiple times.
Oh.
It's going to print it out.
So, do we need to?
Wait. You could.
Yes.
I know, right?
So I. Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's like.
It went for me.
I get.
Okay, that's fine. That's all right. That was good. So how did you find the last letter?
Hey, you can
What's the
hear
length?
anybody that has a phone. sale.
Oh, okay. How many letters and figures now, right?
Right.
The length,
Well,
the time comment,
yeah.
could you use length
Yeah.
as your
I'll
input?
let you know.
Hopefully, yeah, if I don't have one by then, definitely just hit me up, I'll let you know. Hopefully I would like to.
They definitely make life easier.
Yeah.
You know, you can look on Discord for that kind of stuff too, right?
No, I didn't even think, oh my God.
They have a finance line.
Thank you. Mhm. Yep, they did, okay. So what do you guys
So
do?
right under this one, to print.
You're leaving
I don't,
us.
I don't know where he's going. Where? Maybe he'll.
Try and get an archive. You should try and transfer. Oh, you can't.
I will, I'm like, requiring to get pick up with another. You're right.
Well,
I'm not putting on her. I'm putting like.
I'm doing the same teacher you have, but I'm doing her on Tuesdays. Oh wait, never mind. I'm also on 130 or 131.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, but she doesn't.
So now-
I
Oh, you're doing 130.
Yeah.
Somebody asked you. Are they just super excited? No, you won't.
And I think you will get it. I think you will
I'll
get
probably get it, but I won't like it.
And
Yeah,
Same.
it won't be. No.
it. I love it.
I'm really tempted to try and like start learning it now, so I can test out of it as class starts. I just don't know how like I don't know how far I can go learning this to test out.
Tuesday,
But I don't
Friday,
know.
show up in our class, but that's it.
Yep.
It's not what you want to know.
If you want to know what book, if you want to know what book, I work with the TLC, I know what book is there, so I can find out for you.
Oh, I can.
Seventh edition of the New Perspectives, HTML5 and CSS JavaScript. Have fun.
I don't want to get the book.
You can, it's online.
I've got the book. This.
Yeah.
I just know.
Literally, I left it.
Watching TV.
Like
No.
Does that make sense? Or whatever. No, that's my school. Like, oh my God. Like, I was just so it's still like I can make
It still works. You're gonna buy a pie for your pocket. I can buy a 3D printer for my little Pokeballs.
Yeah, I told him I got the list thing.
If you get a raspberry, I get a person.
Oh, I was strawberry.
Oh, were you here last night? We're playing with raspberry. Are we? Or is it today?
I think it's next week.
No, she said if we got done early enough today. With work, I think we can start like.
Do you want a
That
3D
would be
printer?
well, of course I do, but I'm fine money, so.
Not even for $100.
No, okay, buying 100 for yeah, it's $100 for free. But you spend like hundreds of dollars on the
I just want someone to print me a Pokemon.
that's a lot of money.
You're
It's probably like $100.
I always just use 30 for us.
Or something.
Really nice.
Yeah, the rest.
No, I wish I could.
That's what we were talking
My
about.
dad has like tons of C programs with them all the time for our house. So he's not done.
That's good.
Or
So
is
he's gonna
that-
let me borrow it. He's gonna give me one now.
They have like little kids.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get one of those with my raspberry Pi.
There's so much fun.
I want to do a bunch of fun.
There's so much fun.
Wanting to recycle clothing, donate them. Wanting to be green and not throw away clothes that do not.
Right. Legitimately, like I want to recycle my clothes, like the way you recycle cardboard or the way you recycle glass.
You know, to do that, I just want to turn it into rags.
Oh, because I didn't understand.
You can recycle clothes, I just don't know if Missouri has it. A lot of other more like progressive states like California, Oregon, and New York, literally you can recycle clothes and they'll shred it up and like turn it into like paper or like, or a lot of other kids will take like tennis shoes and like turn like the soles into like, playground.
Yeah, no, that's.
It's the same concept. You just, somewhere that shreds the clothes and turns it. See, that's what I'm saying. So there's got to be a way for me to recycle clothes. Like, you're not gonna donate clothes that have rips and stains, but I don't want to throw it away because that's just going to the landfill. But I don't need
It's very important.
Shirley, if you're about to tell me where to do this and you're sitting right next to me, I'm like,
No, I don't. No, I never heard of it. That's why I was confused. I was like, I really don't understand what you're talking about. Yes. Now we started typing, I am in need of
Now,
clothes.
if you got it, I'll close it.
We started typing.
Well, that's
Tell them all those
$700.
things are right now. Put a nice description so we know what you're printing instead of just 57 letters. The first letter of the word is. You guys have got it, I think. All right. So tell me here.
This makes me insecure about my name or program. Though. This
No,
is
you're-
really pretty.
Your name already looks really good. Okay, so I'm going to fix mine. I'm going to decorate it, make it much prettier. So instead of just printing the word, I'm going to print the word is less word.
I just want to go to the next one.
Sure. Is she not here today?
I haven't checked our channel though. Maybe nobody was in there. We met with our client the whole day. But we just came in, so I bet she might have showed up. But nobody was there. I don't blame her either.
No. Okay, so there's my first one. And then I'm going to indent this a little bit so that it's under my word. I'm going to say the first letter is, and then I'm going to add word index position 0 to print out that first letter. And then we wanted to print out the length of the word. IntelliSense Help is just right in the way. The length is plus string length of word. Look at all those parentheses. You guys just handle them like nobody's business.
Now, I have a.
Okay. And then lastly, I want to print the last letter. And so I think everybody did really good at figuring out that one. The last letter is thank you, sir. Would you? Everybody's doing their scheduling. This is my 120 class.
Oh, the 120 class.
The 120 class. This is Jay. Jay is going down to the capstone because he's about ready to graduate. So do you guys
Nice.
have any questions that you would like to ask him while we have him here trapped about your scheduling? Capstone. What is capstone?
Well, so ironically enough, capstone actually stands for the brick that goes in the middle of an arch.
That's what I thought.
Because without it, like, it would fall apart. So the point of the class is to bring everything you've done together in one project. So I guess that's why they call it capstone.
Whoa,
So-
nice answer.
And,
What advice would you give to like new programmers coming up when they hit a road and trying to learn a concept and they just can't seem to grasp that concept?
okay. I would tell you that, so like, I think the biggest downfall of like programming in general is trying to jump straight into coding. Like, I know that's like a really hard concept and I struggled with it. I was just, because in the beginning you can get away with it. But later on, when you get into complex situations, you really need to sit down and think about step by step, what do I need to do to solve the problem? So once you understand your basics of how to make a function and how to pass variables and how to declare variables and that kind of stuff, that's great. But really, like, the key to programming is being able to go to a whiteboard and being like, this is the problem. Okay, well, I know that my result needs to look like this, and to do that, I need to get my I don't know, I need to format my data like this. So then work on just that small part. And then you can go to step 2 and be like, okay, well, I got it like this. Now I need it here. How do I do that? And just solve those little pieces at a time. Test a lot, code a little. So, yeah. And then you cannot, honestly, my advice is don't go to Stack Overflow until you have, like, you need to have a good base knowledge of the language you're in before you go to Stack Overflow. Because you can find some useful information on places like Stack Overflow, Geek for Geeks, and stuff like that. But you have to know what you're looking for, so that way you can decide whether the information they have there is what you need or if it's not what you need. Because otherwise you'll get on a tangent. You'll spend 3 hours trying to get whatever they had to work with your project, and it just turns out not at all what you were doing. So,
Right, you're working against yourself, basically.
yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. The hardest part, honestly, is taking a break. Like, if you have like Java 1, then you have Java 2, and then you go a semester, and then you have a capstone project, and you haven't coded. You know what I mean? It all comes back to you pretty quickly. I would say another thing is to not try too hard to remember the syntax of everything.
Oh, thank goodness.
Because you need to just remember what you need to do.
Right.
Like, you need to be like, oh, I need a loop here.
Right.
Right. And then, because realistically, it doesn't matter what you learn here at OTC. You can learn Python, C#, Java, C++. You go to the real world, they're going to be like, hey, we're programming in Google language.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And they might be like, you know, we're going to give you 10 weeks to try to get the basis. But like, all languages are kind of the same. They all have loops. They all have variable declarations.
Right.
But you do have to keep in mind some differences between like Python and Java. So like Python and JavaScript, it's really important to realize that Java and Python both decide variable types on compile time. You know what I mean? So you don't have to worry about that, but you do have to keep it in mind, because sometimes I've had issues in Python to where it expected, like, somehow the compiler assumed that somehow this was an int, but then I was trying to use it as a string. And those are really rare occasions. But just know that sometimes you just have to, you know, debug your own stuff. I can tell you, I never use the debugger tool. I quite frankly think that they're kind of confusing. What I do like is the stack, the error stack.
Right.
Get used to reading the stack, because it'll tell you exactly where it's mad. And especially if you get into web development and JavaScript, because like, you can have 5 different JavaScript files, and if one of them has a line that's broken, it'll break all your JavaScript.
Right.
And then that's about the only thing I use like Google Inspector tool for, is I've been recently doing like grid, CSS grid, which is also amazing. But like, it'll actually tell you where your JavaScript's broken. So, and a lot of times it's just you misspelled something or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, there's just a lot. I mean, there's a lot of little ibbicky things that you can do. And then like, one recommendation I have is, I have a friend, and every time we code together, we run into an issue, right? Like, we'll start here, we'll program this, we'll program this, we'll program this. Well, some over here now, it's like, oh, our data's getting duplicated somehow. Okay, well, now we got to figure out in the series of steps where it's getting duplicated. Well, for some reason, he likes to just jump all the way to the beginning. But like, what I like to do is to be like, well, where's the last place we knew that our data was 100% accurate?
Right.
And I try to start there, and then always, like, your print function is your best friend. You know what I mean? Always print out those variables, like if you've altered them, to make sure you're getting what you think should be your data.
Right.
Because one of our issues is we were converting an array to a string. Well, our C# was grabbing stuff from a database and then passing it to JavaScript, which also isn't easy, by the way. But it ended up leaving a comma at the end. And it took us an hour to find that it was leaving a comma at the end. And then all we had to do with JavaScript is pop that comma off, because it treats, JavaScript treats arrays like a stack. So it has a pop function, which is kind of cool. But there's a lot of stuff. I could go on forever, to be honest. So, yeah.
No, a lot of what you said, what did you say, test a little,
Test.
or quote a little test, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that, I know.
That's a good advice.
Yeah.
That's
Always,
a good advice.
always test. And honestly, if it's something that you can, because the whole, like a lot of object orienting is like being modular. So realistically, everything you make, you should be able to just rip out of your code and throw it into a different code and it should work. So that being said, if you're making a function to do something, make sure you make a tester for that individual function before you're like 6 functions deep and then it breaks and you have no idea where. So you want to be 100% confident that your function's doing what you want it to do before you try to implement it somewhere in a larger scheme.
Right.
Because then you'll just freak out. You have a mental breakdown. You don't know where it's breaking, but it's broke.
Right.
And then sometimes when you're really deep in the functions, if it's not an error, like if it's not an actual like syntax error, but like your stuff's messed up, it could be because that function's returning something that you didn't anticipate.
Right.
So yeah, always test that stuff.
Cool. You don't have time to be tutoring, huh?
Well, actually, to be fair, we've already knocked out our capstone.
Have
Like that's
you?
what we're here today. Is our clients 100% like happy with it? Except for,
Nice.
we decided we don't need that feature, so we just got to take some features out, which is cool because we anticipated adding more features.
So I think what Jay is saying is that he might be available for tutoring. So send me an email and I will forward it to him if that's.
Yeah,
If he's very, as you can tell, very laid back with his approach to things and doesn't get too excited about errors or
Yeah.
anything.
You were standing over.
And he thinks that everybody should take the game programming class.
I think so. I thought it was fun.
Oh, I'm
The
excited
game
to take
programming
that
class.
the next
No, you're
time.
doing the game design.
Oh, I thought that was
Game
the same.
design.
Yeah, no,
Not the
no,
same.
they're different. Yeah,
No.
but
You have to take that one to take game programming.
take
so you're okay.
take the game design one a little bit more serious than I did though.
It's
so,
different. She's changed it a lot too.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different than when you took it.
Yeah, because for mine, I mean, I took it online. Like it was like super easy.
Hmm.
But I kind of, because I'm interested in making my own games, and the part that I suck at is like storyboarding. You know what I mean? Because like
Right,
I
it's
can do all the
hard.
coding, I can
Hmm.
do that stuff. But
Hard to decide what you
Yeah.
want it to do.
Yeah,
It really is.
so.
Give him a hand. Say thank you for stopping and talking to us. But yeah, I'll send you emails if anybody
Sure.
wants tutors. Thank you, sir. Okay, so last letter.
Yes. Did it. Yes.
She got it. Okay, so my last letter in my word, I can get by looking at the length of my word array and then subtracting 1. So I know that my length is always 1 more than my highest index value because my index starts at 0. So if I take length minus 1, that's going to give me my highest index value.
What Jacob and I did was the very beginning of the output word,
Uh-huh.
we put word len equals len word.
Perfect. Saving a variable is a really good way to do it. And it would make this line of code simpler, right? Because then you can use that variable instead of calling that length function again. So totally perfect. Let's run it. Has everybody got it? I think you guys all had it working. So I'm going to put in my sentence. Let's see, the cow jumped over the moon. And then I've got my beginning here. Our sentence has 6 words and 28 letters. My first word is the. And notice that in my output there, I maybe could have done something to count which word it is, but I would have had to do a lot more work because my function is only knowing about this word, right? We're only passing it the 1. Now, when I'm looking at this word, though, I can tell you the first letter of it is T. It's 3 letters long, and the last letter is E. Now, if I look at my next word. The word is cow. The first letter is C. It's 3 letters long, and the last letter is W. And then here's all of our letters all spit out. And so we're going word to word to word. So this is a really, really good program for you to use for processing arrays, thinking about things, running it. If you don't like the debugger, Jay took a lot of his beginning programming classes online, and I do think that if you're online, you don't get as much experience using the debugger, because even though I'm sending you videos and saying, use the debugger, it's still a little confusing, so people can be reluctant. But oh man, once you figured it out, then you don't have to be putting weird print statements in. But in the meantime, you can put weird print statements in anywhere you want to see what's going on. It's just that when you do that, you have to put more information here, like the last letter is, so that you know what you're printing out, so that's meaningful. Okay, so great program for us, great sample. It did a whole bunch of things with strings. Notice that when we created our array in this one, we didn't have to do any initialization ourselves. We let this sentence split function take care of creating our whole array for us, and that it did that. All right, so that one looks really good. Okay, so let's write a simple one. This one was kind of involved. Think about it, it started out really simple, right? We just started with a sentence and we split it into words. So just like Jay was saying, that's how we always want to approach things. Start with the first thing it needs to do, which you guys all did when I asked you to do add these options to it. You started with thinking about, oh, how could I print that first letter? And then you went from there, so good job. So let's create a simple one. I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to save this. And I'm going to call this one Chapter 7. And this is just going to be family array. And I'm going to make it Python. Let's create some comments here. Call this one family. Okay, so in this program, we're going to prompt for family members and save them all in array, save them in an array, and then print them. So just like our last program, we're going to need a function to get our input.
So that's part of that purpose is to print them, right?
Yeah, and just print them. So I'm going to name it get input. And let's print kind of a heading like we did last time. We'll do some dashes. And then we'll print something like, yeah, we'll make this be our family list. And I'll put some dashes, just kind of try to make it even. And then for our first input, whoops, let's say we're going to return name a family member. So for our main then, we need to create an array, and this time we're asking our users for each of the entries. So we're not going to be able to create this thing dynamically using that split function, and we're not going to be able to initialize it ourselves by entering in the values. We're going to have to create it as an empty array to start with. And if you remember from last time, to tell Python we want this to be an empty array, we just put the opening and closing square bracket. Now I'm going to add to my family.append, and what I want to add is whatever I get returned from get input, because we're going to ask for a family member, and it's going to return that family member to us, and we're going to add that to our array.
What does append mean?
Just add to what's already there. So it's not like going to start over. It's just going to add to whatever is already in that array. Now, after our append, let's print that. So we're just going to do it one time. So now I'm going to run this.
I was thinking it was short for appendix,
Nope.
like not the organs.
It makes sense though. Okay, so I'm going to run it.
Oh wait, we have to end the names.
Oh, I didn't call it, did I? You are right. Let me do that. I like to leave that out.
Test this on.
Test you. Okay, let's run it now. It should do something. Now I get down here and I've got my prompt, name a family member. I'll put my brother.
Oh, Ronnie and Renee.
Yeah, we're all R's. Isn't that cute?
Nuh-uh.
Uh-huh. My sister does not appreciate being Randy, so that she could be an R.
Oh my
I know, but she's very upset still all this time later that they couldn't come up with another R name.
My name's Randy.
Randy. With a Y, like a boy.
So your last name's Riley, right?
Mine isn't, but yeah, it wasn't. Okay, so now you see Ronnie. Is he there? Did yours work? You got a member? Well, that's not my only family member.
What was your maiden last name?
It's a weird one. It's actually really close to hers. Uh-huh. Because hers is Sealy, and mine is Seyl, S-E-Y-L, but everybody always says Seal. So
I get that too all the time. I get seal. I got that on big screen. He's like, I'm a seal. I'm like, there's an E-Y. Right here.
I was thinking if what's your maiden name, your maiden last name was Riley, they could have named you Riley.
I always did in my husband that I just married him so I could have a simple last name. And he was like, what? Okay, so make this loop. How can we keep asking for family members' names until they're done? Oh.
I know. We make an output module and then we have a for loop.
That'll work. Do it. That's a good idea. Other ideas?
How do you want us to end the
That's a good thought. How should you end it? You should ask them to give you a sentinel value, like none or
zero?
X, yeah, or whatever. Probably a string. Stay away from numbers since you're using strings for this one. Like enter X if you're done. Okay, try it. We have 30 minutes, so let's see if you can get it.
My brain is mashed potatoes.
So keep asking for family members until they enter an X or whatever you want it to be. This is a hard one. I'm asking a lot of you. You can do it. Yes, you can.
What?
Logan's like, done. Ding.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
Oh. So really?
It's looking under every release.
Downloads.
Yada. Download. It's literally like half, like every other one. And there's no plan X, I don't understand. So.
I'm just doing what I would do. I don't know if that's the right thing.
Can't do a download.
Yeah. I really want to get these
You use your try thing.
No, it's not numbers.
He's like, oh, it takes the word out. What?
Does that make everything lowercase?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can like you can choose like if statements for